Donkey Kong has pants now. You know it's a good video when I have to start it off with a bunch of disclaimers. Disclaimer number 1. You're free to disagree with me on the topics I'm going to lay out in this video. This is all very subjective stuff, and this is an opinion piece. Disclaimer number 2. Despite some things that I will say in this video, I don't want you to forget that I am excited for Donkey Kong Bananza. It is, as of right now, probably the Switch 2 game I'm looking forward to the most. Okay, disclaimer's done. Let's get started with the video. When I saw the trailer for the first time for Donkey Kong Bananza, love the name by the way, I zeroed in immediately on the googly eyes, a trademark of Rareware, and now more of a platonic thing. I asked myself, well, is it possible that this is a Yooka-Replay trailer? But that didn't seem right for a final trailer for a Switch 2 Direct. No offense to Platonic, but it felt like Nintendo would end with a first-party title. The shading and lighting effects mixed with the graphics and art style made me think that this would be some sort of follow-up to Mario Odyssey, or maybe even just some other 3D Mario. I could easily see Mario running through this area, and that does make sense because this game does take place within the same universe as Mario. And then there was the Donkey Kong reveal, and I was surprised. There had been rumors of a 3D DK game for a while now, several years. But since DK64 left such a dark mark on history that it allegedly killed an entire gaming genre, I was skeptical at best that they'd ever go down the route of a 3D game ever again. But with the advent of games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land and the return of the Metroid Prime series, I really should have seen this coming, to be honest. The DK Park opening, DK having such an emphasis in the Mario movie, DKC Returns HD coming to Switch, they were all indicators that Donkey Kong was going to be in the spotlight very, very soon. It took some time for me to digest how I feel about Bananza's trailer, but after some thought, I have finally figured out how to word my feelings. Looking at Donkey Kong Bananza, I'm really happy as a Nintendo fan. But as a Donkey Kong fan, I'm not. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that DK is getting a new game. I'm happy it's a 3D game. I am very unhappy with this game's gameplay and stylization already though. There's multiple reasons for this, and I want to lay out each grievance as carefully and concisely as possible. So let's do that. You're probably expecting me to start off with Donkey Kong's new design. Well, to be fair, this was where that part was in the script, but I found that that particular section got so big that it kind of ended up becoming like twice the size of the rest of the video, and it became just enough for its own video. So look forward to that maybe next week if I feel mentally ready for the verbal beatdown that I'm going to get for that opinion. Now, I said I had grievances, and that probably sounds way like more severe than it actually is. Really, I kind of boiled down my issues with Bananza into 2 different sections. And the first section is gameplay and aesthetic. Alright, I'm a big fan of the idea that we should take video game IPs and evolve them over time. I think that's how IPs survive if their original game genre has become outdated over time. However, while I'm pleased that this is a 3D Donkey Kong game, this is not really the kind of gameplay I want in that kind of game. The idea of bashing and digging through terrain is neat, I guess, but there's a reason so many people saw these opening parts of the trailer and thought this was Odyssey 2. I mean, it's the same team as Odyssey, so that makes sense, but While I love Mario Odyssey and a Mario Odyssey 2 would be very welcome, I don't want my Donkey Kong to become Mario. And yes, I get it. Same universe. It makes sense for things to cross over or be consistent. But if this is the future of how DK games will look, then I'm not nearly as interested as I think Nintendo wants me to be. At least not from what I've seen in this first trailer. There is a bit here or there that's interesting, mostly the callbacks to the original trilogy if I'm honest. But for the most part, this is just Mario Odyssey 2. But you can break things, which is neat, I guess. Games having their own identity is very important. And I, frankly, fear the loss of what made DK games fun, special, and good when I see Bananza's gameplay. I am afraid that this game will take the franchise's identity and just kind of toss it out the window. And don't get me wrong, I don't want them to simply not evolve the series if it needs to evolve, but I don't want the series to evolve in a direction that is too similar to another. There is a reason that people fell in love with the Donkey Kong games in the first place. I mean, as much as people dunk on DK64, it was the 7th best-selling game on the N64, and sit down before I say this because it is shocking, DK64 was actually very well regarded upon its release. And looking at the Super Nintendo bestsellers list, Donkey Kong Country was number 3 overall, and Donkey Kong Country 2 was number 6. That's for all the Super Nintendo games. It was even such a big deal that Donkey Kong Country sold so well that it sparked this giant rumor that Miyamoto actually despised Donkey Kong Country because he felt that those games threatened Mario's popularity. And you might be wondering, well, Amalia, how did DKC differentiate itself from Mario back then? Weren't they both 2D platformers? Which, yes, they were both 2D platformers, but DKC stood out against Mario because it was very atmospheric. It had bits of whimsy and silliness, but it felt very immersive. Mario often has a colorful and cartoony vibe to it, while original Donkey Kong Country is moody, it's a little bit dark, it's mysterious, it's a bit spooky at times, and just straight up gorgeous and serene at other times. Returns and Tropical Freeze somewhat emulate this feeling, but Retro Studios definitely brightened a lot of this up. I don't think it's bad to do that per se, but they did still keep quite a bit of the vibe of the original trilogy in their games. For the most part, at least. I don't think DK needs to be doomed to be a 2D platformer forever, and I love the idea of him being 3D. But this almost doesn't even feel like 3D platforming to me. And I can't help but wonder with this departure if they're even considering what made the series great in the first place. I have noted that this game is in fact called Donkey Kong Bananza and not Donkey Kong Country Bananza. That does make me wonder if we'll get future 2D platformer titles that feel a bit like the older style of Donkey Kong, and that Bananza is a bit of an experiment, a one-off. And if it's not an experiment, maybe it is the start of something new entirely for a mainline series. But maybe Country can also exist as its own thing of 2D platformers, similar to the new Super Mario Bros. Series. Only time will tell, though. Just a small side note, you know what all of this reminds me of? This, like, breaking things and digging about and gold and stuff like that? It kind of reminds me of Wario. Like, I feel like this could have been a Wario game. I really do. At least gameplay-wise. Maybe they didn't think Wario was marketable enough? It's a thought. Moving on to the other big subject I want to talk about, and that is music. One of the reasons Donkey Kong Country has always felt so immersive and fantastic to play, and I'm sure most Donkey Kong Country fans will agree with me on this, is because of the music. Donkey Kong as a franchise has been put into the hands of many an amazing composer over the years, but there are two icons that stand above them all as the ones who shaped the Donkey Kong sound over the years. And that is David Wise and Grant Kirkhope, neither of whom seem to be on the staff roll for this game. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that these are the only two people who are viable for ushering in a new age of Donkey Kong. They are legends, but it's also fair to give others a chance to shine as well with the franchise. My worry about a lack of David Wise and or Grant Kirkhope is that with so many other things already feeling like massive departures from the DK franchise, what will remain that feels familiar? What will remain of what we already fell in love with? Kirkhope and Wise have very particular musical styles. Kirkhope's style feels very whimsical and dramatic, and it was perfect for Donkey Kong's very first 3D outing. Wise has a moody, atmospheric flow to his style that really lifted up the feeling of the 2D platformer games. These styles have really melded into the identity of Donkey Kong. While I still think other composers could maybe replicate that feeling, nothing so far that I have heard from the Bananza soundtrack suggests that they even do that they're even trying for that. It sounds like a totally new style. It sounds like Mario Odyssey. And don't get me wrong, it sounds great, it sounds cinematic, but it does not sound like Donkey Kong. Well, for the most part. There's some parts that do feel kind of more cinematic, but have little heralds back to the modern Donkey Kong Country vibe. I don't want it to sound like anything new is bad, but just imagine if, like, The Legend of Zelda totally abandoned how it does music and never mind, Breath of the Wild exists. Imagine if Mario suddenly had a totally different sound. I just can't fathom that. I just can't be on board with that. Again, I think the new stuff is really great, but it doesn't sound like Donkey Kong. And that's my problem with it. I don't want anyone to be confused. I do think the new stuff sounds great. I don't necessarily want whoever is doing the music to just emulate the sounds of Kirkhope and Wise. I think it's fine to do your own spin on something, but I do think it still needs to capture the feeling and essence of Donkey Kong. And right now, from what I'm hearing, it just doesn't really do that, at least from my perspective. Now, I said there was only going to really be 2 sections of this, but there is 1/3 final section, although it is much smaller than the other 2, and that is story. I've already gone over the idea of Nintendo rewriting DK lore in this video, link in the description. It's probably not too surprising to hear that I don't really like reboots. I feel like oftentimes reboots can miss the mark on what made something so good in the first place, but maybe I'm just saying that as a Star Fox fan. I think that returning to an old idea and fleshing it out can be really rewarding though. I feel that as a writer who is currently doing the same thing to a novel draft when I'm not recording these videos for YouTube. But with reboots, you just have to be so careful that you don't lamify something. If you don't know what that is, that's because it's a word I legitimately just made up, but I'm sure you've experienced this before. A studio reboots something you love and they take an aspect of that thing and they just make it worse for no apparent reason. It drives me insane when that happens. I really do fear that happening here because, again, I'm a Star Fox fan. The trauma of Star Fox Zero runs deep. I think I want them to flesh out parts of DK's lore and story. I think that would be really cool. But if that comes at the cost of, say, retconning a lot of past games or changing things to be less cool, which I know is very subjective, then I don't want that. I just don't want that. Some people probably think I'm insane for making this video. You're getting a new game, isn't that what you asked for? Someone's probably thinking that as they're watching this video. You might also be thinking, well, if you don't want this, what do you want? And the answer is actually pretty simple. I want a Donkey Kong game that feels like Donkey Kong. And so far, from what I'm seeing of Bananza, it doesn't really feel like Donkey Kong, and I don't like that. That's the whole point of the video. You don't even have to watch the rest of it. And there we go, I just TLDR'd the whole thing. People need to understand that a new game is not necessarily what people want. Just because it's a new game does not mean it's a new game that will actually cater towards the desire of fans. Don't get me wrong, we do want a new game. I don't want it to be confusing, but like, you can't just make any old game, you know? A good example of this is Star Fox Adventures. It's why people got mad at Rare when Star Fox Adventures came out. It was a new Star Fox game, but it was not like the previous Star Fox games, and that was a huge controversy. Now, the Adventures comparison is a little bit extreme, but it does lead me to a really good point. And that is that Adventures, for as different and weird as it was, ended up becoming one of my favorite games of all time. Bananza could very well do the same thing. I could learn that this new style of Donkey Kong is also just as good as the older style. But as of right now, before Bananza's release, I'm not convinced. I have hope that my mind can be changed though. And that is really my biggest wish for this game. I want it to change my mind, and I want it to make me like this new era of Donkey Kong. But until that day comes when the game is released and I get it into my hands, I am apprehensive. I am skeptical. I am looking at what feels like Mario Odyssey 2 and thinking to myself, okay, so where's my actual Donkey Kong game? But again, I have hope. And I hope that if you're in my position too, you also have hope. Different is sometimes not bad. New things can lead to even better things. I do have faith in that idea. But also, if they throw out every little bit of Donkey Kong Country that us fans from the 90s have loved, I will be sad and cry. And wipe my tears on Miyamoto's silly graphic tee. Dude, look at him. He's kind of slain in that fit, not gonna lie. Anyways, thank you for watching today's video. How do you feel about Bananza? Are you excited for it? Are you uncertain about it as well? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I will be back with more monkey videos because I do love the silly monkey games so very much. I have a lot of scripts in the works as we speak, and I do think, apart from the Switch 2 release week, I will be returning my focus for the moment back to more research-based videos. I've done a lot of opinion pieces lately, and while I do find those scripts the easiest to write, I feel as though all those videos end up feeling negative. And I'm tired. I don't want to be negative. That being said, the next video will be negative because I've already written the script. But after that video, I'm launching into some research-based videos and probably more theory ones. Ones that I've been wanting to make for a while, but require a lot of prepping and research. Like a lot of prepping and research. And, you know, requiring technology to work. Which has honestly been the biggest issue with getting those videos together. Oh my gosh, I could go on for ages about that. Yay, technology. But that's all for future videos, and I'm rambling now. Hit the subscribe button for more dragons and monkeys and Nintendo-related content, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.